Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's webinar, Navigating AI in Academia, Elevate Excellence and Safeguard Integrity. This is a Times Higher Education webinar in partnership with Turnitin. My name is Meme, and I'm Director of Consultancy based in THE's Singapore office. I will be chairing today's discussion, whereby the panel will discuss best practices and exchange knowledge about how institutions can help their students leverage AI and improve performance while preserving academic integrity. Today, I'm joined by a panel of experts who are James Torley, Regional Vice President of Turnitin, Alex Steele, Director of AI Strategy Education, and a professor in the Faculty of Law and Justice at UNSW Sydney. Ho Shen Yong, who is Executive Director, Institute for Pedagogical Innovation, Research and Excellence at NTU. I'm also joined by Lee Wee Leong, Vice President of Learning Services at Singapore University of Social Sciences. Thank you to all my wonderful panelists. There will be an opportunity to ask questions to the panel during the final 5 or 10 minutes for the hour schedule that we have today. So please write any questions that you have in the Q&A box that you see in Zoom, and we will try to answer as many as we can. Now, I'm going to get started. And so my first question to the panelists would be, how can institutions leverage AI to enhance learning outcomes while maintaining academic integrity? And so my first question will be directed at Shen Yong.
Thank you, Miri. So if I may, I'm just going to interpret a little bit on academic integrity. I tend to explain it towards maybe academic rigor, because that's one of the things that institutions are most concerned with, especially now with Gen AI. And of course, if you still have your traditional invigilated exam, those are still quite well guarded. It is the take-home assignments that are actually a bit more tricky, right? So what we did at NTU, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, we actually stated a position on how we want AI to be used. Okay, we do not want cognitive skills to be eroded. But at the same time, we want students to be well-versed with the AI tools. So we gave faculty this guideline. We want a certain amount of flexibility. So we provided guidelines rather than hard and fast strict rules. So the question that was posed to the faculty is, if your student get an A- in your course, would you be willing, okay, now with Gen AI available, will you be willing to hire your student in a job related to the course subject matter? So if you're not comfortable with this, with now the pervasiveness of AI tools, you may want to modify the assignment tasks to make them more resilient against AI use. So some of these requirements could be, you make the assignment more personal, more specific, and more specialized, or involving the physical world. Okay, so that will make it more authentic, in the nature of the assessment. So that's one way to do it. Another way is actually to modify the rubrics, and if the class size is small, perhaps include an oral component. So that would actually help authenticate, if the students know the subject matter well enough, okay, or even a Viva with a Q&A. Right. So that would probably work for small classes. So if all fails, maybe you can consider reducing the weightage of take-home assignment and move some of them to a more controlled environment where assessment is being done. So these are actually some of the considerations that you can take. And I believe that this has been more than a year, so most folks would have done something quite similar. right? So we have actually established also a community of practice so that we can exchange good ideas with each other. And actually, some of our faculty actually have gone on to develop Gen AI tools for their students' use. And the nature of such tools are usually to prompt students or to have a Socratic conversation with the students. So these chatbots will not just give you an answer. No, it'll actually prompt you with an easier question, or it'll nudge you think in certain directions, but not giving you answer in a wholesale manner. So that's for what we've done at NTU.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives. I want to now come to James to see if he has a different perspective.
Thanks, Mei Mei. I think as Shen Yong said, I think you can approach this question from a number of different angles, and so I'm gonna touch on two things, which maybe we can also develop further in the conversation. Firstly, actually, I'll say that I fundamentally believe that it's not a compromise. The idea that you have to compromise academic integrity in order to use AI, I don't think that's the case. I think you can effectively use AI and maintain academic integrity. And I think that's what everyone should be striving for. One of the things, and in my role as regional vice president for Asia Pacific, obviously I travel around the region a lot and speak to a lot of different institutions, different countries at different levels. And one of the things that I've heard sort of consistently, and I would say, especially outside of Australia in the last 2 years, has been how to, when we're talking specifically about academic integrity and the complexity that AI brings to understanding if the student has done their own work and, potentially using AI detection, not using AI detection, compared to traditional forms of copy-paste plagiarism. It's a lot of stress, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort to be put on individual instructors or faculty members. And Australia's, I think, certainly I would say, is probably the world leading country in terms of dealing with academic integrity, and has invested a lot in academic integrity offices and specialists to think about these things, mainly due to the rise of contract cheating that's been seen over the last 10+ years. And I was literally just having a meeting the other day in Japan, and kind of this came up with how universities in the rest of the region haven't really sort of focused on that as an area. And one of the things I would say that we'll see universities may need to think about is maybe not having specialized offices or units to deal with this centrally, but certainly look at equipping people to get more expertise within each faculty to help deal with it. Because I think to try and have everything done at an individual instructor or professor level is putting a huge amount of load and stress on people and students. The other thing I'll quickly mention that I think is very important, and Shen Yong, you were talking about assessment redesign. I think one of the things that we're hearing and speaking to people, it's coming up more and more, is this idea of ensuring the process of the assessment. It's not just going to be about the end product, it's about how did you get there. And that's about integrity, and it's about integrity of the student doing the work, but also I think really trying to think about and understand what are the skills that are needed in this world of generative AI. And a lot of that is about how you're going about the process as well, right? It's the final output. Gen AI can always, in a lot of cases, might be able to produce, but it's how did you get there, and what techniques, what tools did you use, and how did you bring your own knowledge, your own expertise, your own skills into that matter. So this focus on process of assessment, I think, is going to be one of the major changes going forwards.
Thanks, James. I want to come now to Wee Leong as Vice President of Learning Services to perhaps add to it and give your perspective as well.
Right, thank you, Mimi. And I do agree with James and Shen Yong about the assessment, and as well as accepting AI as a tool that will be one of those things like Google moving forward, acceptable tool for research, for teaching and learning as well. I just want to say a few things about SUSS. We are a publicly funded university in Singapore. The key difference between SUSS, Singapore University of Social Sciences, and the other AU is that we have a huge population of adult learners, right? So 80% of our students are adult learners learning on a part-time basis in the evening. So that gives us a different sets of challenges, right? So students may or may not be able to come to class for every session, and our number of lessons are not a lot, between 6 to 8 per course. So we need to provide students with comprehensive learning materials and content so that they're able to catch up, given that the limited time that they have. So we have prepared this very comprehensive study guide that often dovetail with a textbook. So what we did on the study guide is that we developed a platform that is on the web, and we embed an AI tutor in there. So we are a big believer of personalized learning. We are also dealing with adaptive learning, but that's another issue altogether. So this particular AI tutor would allow students to query subject matters with respect to the study guide that they have. And we also allow them to access to entire library of study guides. We have about 700 study guides that we develop for all the courses that we have. And students can inquire questions through the study guides. The reason why we're doing this is so that when they have questions and then they are studying at their own time and own pace, they need not wait for the response from the teacher, and save us a lot of time, as well as the students can get their feedback instantly. So that is a tool that we have rolled out, and students seems to like it very much. We use a RAG model. I think everybody understand that by now, retrieval augmented generation, and that in some sense limit the hallucination that comes with Gen AI in general. So that's something that we did, and we do believe that in academic integrity is a major issue right now. We need to be able to address those, right? So some of the practices are to list down the prompts that you use and so on, but to me that can be a little bit more challenging, because then the list of prompts can run to pages and pages. And the issues is that if you re-enter the prompt, you get a different set of answers sometimes, right? So I guess the important is to educate students that learning how to do proper citation, which is what they've been doing all this while, it doesn't change, is important. Citing and ensuring that the content or the resources that they draw from are credible, and that they are validated, that they need to make sure that they critique the content, even if they're generated from Gen AI. So these are some of the things that we're doing. And with some of our adult learners, they do have some issues with their writings, right? So Gen AI is a perfect tool to help them learn and polish and improve their writing, their grammar structure, so that when they hand in a piece of work, it will be a bit more substantial and maybe even a better quality work, right? So with this understanding that the baseline of submission of assignment is not the same as the past, right? So you can see that the quality of the assignment, at least in the way it is written and is presented, has moved to a next level. So do we accept then again students who submit a piece of work that is written and not well expressed? The ideas are there, but it's not well expressed. Is this acceptable? Would the employer accept students from us giving this kind of work? It is, the content is there, idea is there, but it's not well expressed, right? So teaching them how to use Gen AI tools are important, right? So we believe in every course that we should integrate Gen AI into part of the learning. So in that, we have a core skill, which is what the course requires of them, as well as the Gen AI skills, right? Both are important beyond the soft skills. So that's the approach that we are taking, because we are training adult learners that's going to learn something and going back to work and immediately apply what they're learning. We want our students to be efficient in using Gen AI tool as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I want to come to a potentially contentious, and I guess a question that everyone is asking as well, regarding ethics. So what ethical policies and frameworks must be implemented to ensure the responsible use of AI in the existing academic processes? And I want to ask this to Namal, who is the Vice Chancellor of the WB, National University of Juridical Sciences. Based on your background, would you be able to share some of your experiences as well?
Yes. So good morning to all of you. My experience, we are in the law school. number 4 top law school in the country. Our students are very much intelligent and they are very much inspired to use the AI tools. We are very much in problem regarding the extent of use. When our teachers in academic writings or in their teaching, they are using AI, they have the capacity to identify that where there are something mixed up with the writing coming up, that these are not relevant, or sometimes the names coming as authors which are not relevant also. They can identify, they can modify and edit it. The problem is with the students. We have the practice of giving projects to students almost every subject. In project writing, they are using it, and like our academics or the teacher seniors, we modify it according to our concept and some knowledge in the area. They have no background knowledge. They are almost producing as it is coming. And there are, and reading that we are without testing in the Turnitin also, we understand that there are something which are not matching, and more problems that students do not think. There are challenging that AI use is not to be treated as malpractice, or which we have in our Turnitin, that this it should be below 15% similarity, this and now AI also report coming sometimes 60%, 70%, even 90%. So debate is now that how much AI percentage for the first learners, if it is a first year, second year, that ethical dilemma is with us. That one aspect that this is the first learner. Second aspect is how much we can allow, like our Turnitin prior to AI, it was 15%. So that we are still now debating, and there is also a debate among our students and faculty in a workshop that you can't deduct marks for AI because it is legitimate. I can take any concept and it is not to be treated as copy or something. So can there be any way we can devise something, even the first learner, that the first contents coming, there can be any indication that where, or it requires some revision, second edition, so that they can go for that. Otherwise, what is coming, they are giving and it is not matching to what is expected from the students. So to our academics, we know that when we are saying, we are writing, we have responsibility is our, but the young learners, they are not adhering. How we can ensure that even the students, when using AI, how they can also maintain some standards, not only regarding the passing and securing marks, but they can improve the improvement possibilities. If we can improve the ethical elements in our standard, educational standards can be thought of.
I wonder if Alex, you would like to give a comment on that as well.
Yeah, look, thank you. I think the way we're approaching it is to try to keep try to think of sort of really high level principles that everybody can understand and accept and apply, and then work down into particular principles in disciplines and schools. And to us, the most important sort of principles really are transparency. So if we go back to the traditional understanding of a university, that the universities have always been about developing new knowledge by acknowledging previous knowledge, that we didn't think of the idea ourselves, but we built on the work of others. And so one of the really sort of fundamental aspects of the way in which we teach students to learn and to think is to acknowledge sources, to recognize that nobody is sort of a complete genius, and you need to recognize sources. So traditionally we've done that by saying you need to have a bibliography, you need to have footnotes. Now, in a world of generative AI, we need to sort of start to think about how do we make sure that students use AI responsibly and ethically think about how they acknowledge their use of that. So if we start with that principle of transparency at the very beginning, and that applies to the university itself. So we should never use AI systems without actually being transparent about the fact that we're using AI systems. If we're producing documents, there's an interesting sort of scale here. So when we produce documents, Word documents or Google documents, we tend to not acknowledge that we've used a spell checker to fix our spelling mistakes, because we think that everybody across the world recognizes that these systems exist and they fix our spelling mistakes. So there's some degree of use of generative AI that I think we don't need to acknowledge. But beyond that sort of minimal editing ability, once we start to produce documents that might look as though they were created by a human, but have been produced by generative AI, that's when we need to acknowledge that. So if we take that sort of approach of transparency and acknowledgement and then apply that to assessment and student learning, then the same sort of things really apply. So we need to work out, when is it that the use of generative AI is detracting from the student's learning, and in those circumstances to try to quarantine the use of generative AI, or is the use of generative AI, as people have already been saying, helping students to actually better express their ideas or to be able to do more in the time available for them? And if that's the case, then to say, let's really embrace the use of AI as a partner, but make sure that we're really transparent about how we acknowledge that support that we're getting from generative AI. And I think if we think about it as a challenge about transparency and acknowledgement rather than a challenge about prevention of use, then it's a much more sort of positive way for us to think through. And the other really important aspect of sort of responsible and ethical use of AI, particularly for universities, is making sure that both ourselves as universities and our students understand the inherent biases, the accessibility issues, the environmental issues that use of AI in unresponsible ways can lead to, and to try to make sure that we're both building literacy and also really reflective use of the way we use AI. So we've got a series of university level principles that espouse that. And then our job over the next year is to sort of build that down into the way we teach courses. And that involves not just inculcating those values into our students, but it's also our own staff and finding ways to make sure that we can all support each other to sort of work with this technology, because the technology is evolving incredibly quickly, and I don't think any one person can keep up with it. So it is really sort of a group effort to really sort of find those responsible and ethical uses.
Thanks, Alex. I really like this idea of transparency and setting a foundation for students so that it's a value-based education and so that they understand the responsible use of AI. I'm going to come now to a related question, and I guess based on the chat as well, is something of interest to our participants: evaluation. So if I can get the panel to comment on how is AI reshaping traditional evaluation methods, promoting fairness as well, and enabling a more comprehensive insights into student performance. If I can come to James on this.
Yes, I'll start, and hopefully I'll try and keep it short. So I think sure the other panelists have a lot of views on this as well. So I think the first thing I'll kind of reiterate what I said at the start in terms of, I think one of the big things we're going to see is this focus on process as opposed to final product. I think in certain subjects that's always been the case, but it's going to other, it's going to become more and more prevalent and more common and needed in other subjects. In terms of product fairness, I think, and this, just thinking about AI beyond just generative AI, I think one of the things when it comes to grading is the idea of how can we utilize AI in ways to increase fairness in grading, and a simple way, and one thing that we've done in certain areas of our products is really trying to drive efficiencies so that people have to spend less time grading, because obviously if you're grading 100 papers or whatever, you're probably going to be giving a different grade after 3 hours on the 100th than you have done on the first. So how can you actually think about improving fairness and making things more equal through creating efficiencies and providing insights to markers that otherwise would be very hard for them to find, be that it on an individual paper, or thinking about the student's journey across the course of the university. I think that there's a lot of power in AI there, and I think we've only really just started in terms of the potential of AI is the big value of AI is obviously on large cohorts of data and being able to interpret things. I think we're only at the start of the journey there, but for a large university, the amount of insight they can potentially get from all of their student performance and what that can drive, I think is going to be fascinating to see over the next few years.
I'd like to get Wee Leong's perspective on this as well.
Yes, I just want to quickly respond to what Alex has shared just now about transparency in using AI, which I fully agree upon. But my suspicion is that AI will become so pervasive to a point where you can safely assume that most students will be using it, right? So it should be accepted that they will be using it, and to declare that I'm using it over time become less and less meaningful. But again, with that in mind, it comes back to the assessment. So assessment, the traditional assessment that requires students to come up with information and retrieving things to combine together would become less meaningful, right? Because of the fact that Gen AI can do many of the summarization, compiling information together very quickly. So how can we then redesign our assignment, particularly take-home assignment, right? So that is the thing that has been very, very challenging for most of us at this moment. So how can you then become the assignment to be designed in such a way that they're more personalized, more reflective, as well as the final submission need not always be a written report, right? It can be a presentation. So AI as a tool for learning is good, but verifying the information and being able to deliver that while you're in class live without the help of AI is important as well. It's a skill that they need to acquire. And also the assisted grading part that Jim has mentioned. There's something that we have been working on as well, right? We have large courses like many other universities where multiple teachers are marking them. And for us particularly, we have a big cohort of adjunct lecturers, huge, 1,000 over them, right? So they are all from the industry, they're practitioners, and they come with different experiences and background. So you can imagine everyone mark their same exam slightly differently, then we have a huge problem moderating it. So the ability to get AI to do a first cut of the marking is an important and consistent way to help us address those issues. So those are things that we are working on. At this moment, we try with some AI LLM, and they give us rather inconsistent answers. So we need to be able to refine those to get to a point where they become rather stable. Right? Again, they need to take in the comment from the teachers and to be able to implement and incorporate those feedbacks into the system. Yeah, thank you.
Alex, I just wonder if you have any quick comments to add before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with that sort of transparency problem of the idea of actually asking a student to generate every prompt that they used. So it's not a sort of moment by moment log of everything somebody did, because a lot of it they won't even realize they're doing quite soon. So it's really trying to think about like spell checkers, what's the level of use that everybody would be expecting you to use, and what's the level of use that you deliberately engaged in beyond what is the sort of the standard minimum, and being reflective about how you constructed your answer. So reflective notes on use of AI, or general statements about the approach that was taken, first draft human or first draft AI, those sorts of things, so that because what we're really thinking about trying to get to is, how is the student learning, and can the student become more aware and reflective on their learning process? So incorporating that into the way people make their submissions. And I totally agree that written products, the James sort of point about moving away from product to process, is absolutely critical to this, because we've spent a long time using products as using products as proxies for assuring learning. And what AI is doing is it's sort of making us question whether or not the products that are being produced are in fact telling us that the student has learned. So what we need to do is go back to the question of, what is it that we're actually asking the student to learn, and what is the best way to understand that they've learnt it? And it may not be an essay. It may be. It depends on the course. It depends on the way it's structured. It depends on what you're asking, and the complexity of the question, and whether or not the LLMs are up to it at the moment. But part of that is really also being really aware of the fact that the advancements in LLMs are happening really fast. And so just because your assessment was AI immune last year doesn't mean it will be this year. So constantly rethinking, why are you doing this? What's the point of this assessment? How does it actually show a student's learned something?
I want to come to something that Alex has touched on earlier about educating students, but perhaps getting different perspectives from the other panelists. So this is about equipping students then with a knowledge and better understanding of AI's capabilities, and also limitations to ensure responsible use. So Alex, you have shared from your perspective, but I want to ask Shen Yong, from your experience at NTU, is this something that you do as well, and how do you do it?
Yeah, so actually NTU, we're quite fortunate. I mean, just before Gen AI came about, we've developed this large cohort level core courses. So whatever thing that comes our way, we can actually quickly implement it in these courses. So each course has about, like the whole course, 6,000 students. So one of the courses is navigating a digital world. So we conveniently planted all the AI parts in this course. And there were also other courses on ethics and on science and tech for humanity, one of which is AI and the future of work. So we managed to infuse the discussion on this knowledge related to AI and its capabilities and limitations in some of these courses. So I think I think the core courses would be actually a good avenue for us to train our students or communicate to our students. So that's how we've done it in NTU. And back to James and Alex's point on transparency and the importance of the process more than the product. Yeah. So we also try to institute the process of journaling, especially if it's a big assignment. We would require students at certain milestones to provide an intermediate writing or presentation that they have developed, and they'll be evaluated and given formative assessment, formative feedback on some of these works. Of course, if we use there are different ways of doing this. You can use Google Docs or shared documents on Microsoft Office. So some of these can be quite a little onerous. So we're actually trying different ways to make this process easy. So one of my colleagues who teach a big class actually use MS Forms. So students are supposed to actually submit their reflection on MS Forms. And she would have actually a good way to track, how the students' thinking evolve as the weeks progress. So in addition to principles, so there are also different techniques of doing some of these scaffolding and tracking of learning that can be useful. So we also need some practical tools and experimentation so that we can have more ways of doing the things that's needed to ensure authentic learning.
I'm curious with regards to journaling, Shen Yong. Would students be using AI then to write their journal reflection as well?
Oh, okay. So no, so it's actually done in class. So it happens at the end of the lesson. So the students are supposed to key in something. But that you have a good point. Yeah. So they are supposed to reflect on the lesson the last 5 minutes. And then they'll key in and then they'll write something that builds toward that assignment. Yeah. But that's a good point. Yeah, they can if they want also use GenAI for these things. But if it's in a more controlled environment, it can be supervised. Yeah.
Thank you. And I want to ask about respecting students' privacy and striking a balance between integrating detection tools and maintaining academic standards while also respecting students' privacy. And I wonder if, Namal, you can comment on that based on your experience.
This is in fact a very burning issue to students now. Not only students, the young generation and in India also, in perspective of privacy, our constitutional mandate as well as now the data privacy law, parliament. As regards in institutional framework, the students are very much concerned about their privacy and our traditional way of dealing with students in a class that everyone knows others and their performance standards, wrongdoings, or their drawbacks. In our university, it was shared to all the students. The performance level after teachers evaluate circulated to all students in one sheet. So one student is able to know everybody's result. But now, particularly as I report that student who being declared as failed to repeat the things because of AI 80%, 90%, when it is given to them and whole class knowing. So students are definitely raising this issue that once one, maybe I am first learner, whether it can be that individually result can be particularly internal, continuous, it is a continuous assessment, assignment writing, and they are using AI. Whether it can be individually communicated. But we have a system that internal things, it is communicated in the class itself. So that we are now thinking that how we can send the individual performance, because we have more than 100 students, 120 students in a class. So individually asking and individually dealing with that also require time, and also individually all students, individually all subjects. So we are thinking that whether this percentage as in the Turnitin coming, it can be other way, that some way we can see that not only the percentage ABCD something is there. So actual number, if it can be with the administration, and they sit 120 students when we are assessing on a particular assignment, that if it can be just some grade system, percentage system, instead of percentage system, grade system can be, or other some way we can show. So it is not a question of disgrace to any student. So how we can develop, whether there is any way we can avoid this. And other way, when we are publishing any other way, besides these academic things, their privacy is maintained. But in our this system of education where we take more than 100 students, the system of their performance and AI, which is in our academic system that more than some percent student, the teacher concern can reduce marks, haven't asked for repeat. So this way, the students, particularly some students are very much sentimental. So how we can avoid that? So that we are thinking and discussing that. I am willing to share if we can have something. So I am interested to hear others also.
Thanks so much. I want to come to Wee Leong, and based on your student profile, adult learners, younger students, and with regards to privacy as well. Yeah, if you can share. Thank you.
Right. I mentioned early on we have about 80% adult learners, right? And we do have about 15 to 20% of young university students as well. Right. The issues across them are similar. When we started to implement this AI detection in the previous semester, we get a lot of red alert. Students were being asked about this kind of the exceeding percentage of AI generated content. During those days when AI Turnitin doesn't open the student to allow them to see their own scores, that happens. But with this coming semester, when Turnitin allows students to see their own score, we do notice a drastic reduction in those. So it means they must have found ways to circumvent that, right? So going over relying on just plagiarism detection may not be the best way forward, right? Because there are always tools out there that can outsmart systems, and it's just like spyware, right? They keep evolving as you have tighter control. Viruses will still come in over time because they find ways to get through. Well, there's a recent incident that happens within our university that we're still discussing, is whether should we then implement Turnitin detection during exams? Is that something that we want to put our students through in an open book exams, right? So to me, the question is, if the AI can give you an answer quickly from the questions that you set, then perhaps the questions need to be addressed, right? Rather than trying to test students to see whether they use AI for their answers. Well, in typical exams, students have this tendency to remember and memorize content, and then they will regurgitate and put it back onto their answers. So the point where, is it fair for us to put students through the test to see whether they have actually used Gen AI, or maybe they are just doing it from their memory? So it's something that we are still not sure how to move forward. Maybe some of you can have ideas of how we can address this. Is it appropriate for Turnitin during exams?
James, I wonder if you have a response to Wee Leong's question.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I guess I'm not sure if that's been done elsewhere. I mean, obviously, classically, it's always been with essays submitted as take-home assessment. But you know, we're in a new world, so people should try different things, I guess. You know, as to the question itself, so I want to, you know, first of all, one thing that we always make very clear with AI detection is it's a single data point, and it should never be used as a sole determination of whether AI is being used. And that's, you know, effectively what you do if you weren't using AI detection anyway, right? If you suspected that something was written by Gen AI based on your own suspicions, you're going to have to go out and find other data from it. So it's very important that people do that. And where I've seen AI detection be implemented most successful, it's using this approach. So it's just one single data point, and You know, if you're going to take things forward into a misconduct situation, to then build up knowledge from various other data points as well. But I think the key word here, and it's been mentioned already by Alex and others, is really, to me, is transparency, right? If we're in a world where the use of AI is evolving quickly, where we've talked a lot about the focus on process as opposed to finished product. It's very important, as Alex said before, that universities and faculty are open about how they're using AI with students, with in terms of either creating assessment or assisting in marking assessment, and that students should be the same. They should be open in terms of where they're using AI, and there should be also openness in terms of how they're completing assessment. And so I think that we need to just be encouraging and trying to increase the amount of transparency across the whole process. That to me is the key thing, both to ensure integrity but also to ensure learning. So that's my perspective on it.
Alex, you had something to share or to ask as well.
I was just going to say, yes, we do use Turnitin detection in our final exams, and it's interesting. If you've got a closed book exam where the students can't access, then you'd be very surprised if you found any similarity or any AI generation, and it'd be almost always a false flag. But when we've got assessments which are open book exams, so for example, in law, we allow students to bring in any materials they want to answer the question. What the detection does is it stops students from copying somebody else's answer from a past paper or something like that. So all it's doing is you can copy sections from things you've brought in. There's no problem there, but it's a nice little way of just making sure that the student's answer is actually their own answer. So it doesn't normally result in much detection, but it's just on in the background.
Thanks, everyone. It looks like we have a lot of questions from our participants, and a particular one has caught my eye. So the first question is: the use of AI has added hours to my marking. As a casual staff, I'm given allocated hours. I'm required to mark essays up to 100% AI, which I find soul destroying. With any technological change, we need to reimagine our teaching and rethink our assessments. I wonder if any of our panelists want to comment on this particular statement about marking.
For marking, to my mind, that always it is some individual thinking should be there, and it is always there. I believe even if the students use AI or other tools, always there are some individualistic characteristic. It is not that because of using, it will be that there is no value. That way, I do not think. In our institution also, we always try to think that there are definitely some encouragement to individual to grow. So if we make the thing that you are zero talent, so it affects the students' growth. So how we can improve that, we have already discussed, that we should not deal with students and assessment evaluation in such a way that it affects his growth of mind. So this 100% or 80%, it is not to be a benchmark or guiding principle or evaluation. We have to think how students' growth can be. That's our thinking on this issue.
Yeah, just so that sometimes this 100%, it could be because it's using Gen AI as like a grammar tool or something. So So actually, it would be good to talk to the student. Or if the class size is small, I would actually strongly encourage an oral component actually to the assessment, which just will make the whole thing more meaningful. Actually, I would like to throw a question to add to the list of questions. It's like, why do students cheat? So maybe we can think from that angle. But of course, this is a much wider question. I mean, okay, from our experience, it's very often time management, it's the grade, but if they really need to learn something well for their work for after graduation, would they still deceive themselves? Yeah.
Alex, you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to completely just following up what Hashin just said. If you're getting assessments which are having lots of really high AI detection scores, that's a learning moment for the staff member because it means that the assessment isn't fit for purpose. So large amounts of sort of integrity issues are really always down to design of assessment or the way in which the students are engaging or not engaging with the course. That should always be our starting point. Our starting point should be there's something we've done about the way we've designed the course that is encouraging students to behave in that way, because we assume everybody wants to do the right thing, but they're driven to do the wrong thing sometimes, or they're mistakenly doing the wrong thing. So there's something in the design that's actually creating that. And also sort of that same point too, that there are particular types of writing which are very formulaic, which are likely to trick an AI detection tool into thinking that this might be AI generated just because it's formulaic. So I'm very, very strong proponent of the argument that these tools are just flags. So they're just it's something to say to the marker, have a second look at this paper, but you don't prejudge what you'll find when you look at it again. It's just saying, look at this one a little bit more carefully. And if you see a repeated pattern, then think about the nature of the assessment and incorporating oral conversations as part of the learning journey, I think is a really good way to sort of help students to realize that it's not what you want to get away from is the idea that a student can be totally anonymous and then hand in a product and be judged entirely on that. What you really are trying to do is create a learning community where that student and the staff members and all the other students are working together to learn that subject, and that the assessment is just part of that learning process, so that then this idea of sort of handing in something that's not yours is actually counterproductive to what you're trying to do. That doesn't apply to everybody, and it's really difficult in large and remote courses. But I think if that's the principle we should always be sort of looking for.
Thank you. There seems to be a great interest as well to AI tutoring. So a number of questions asking about AI tutor links back to what Lee Leong you said earlier about SUSS. So in the Q&A, there's been interest in for you to share a little bit more about AI tutoring, and if any of the panelists have experience with tutoring, I think that would be interesting.
Right. Just now I shared that we have this thing called the study guide, which we develop for every single course. And we have a huge number of courses, like about 700. So that creates a huge library of content that is being developed in-house. So we allow students to inquire or ask questions pointing either to the study guide that you are that you're studying now, or you can open your questions to all the study guides. We gone a little bit beyond that. We curated several hundreds of open textbook, and we ingested that into the database, right? And then we allow students to point their questions. If I cannot find an answer that I want from the study guide or the library of study guides, then they can point to the entire library of open textbook that we have ingested. Right? So that's an approach that we adapt, because with the study guide, they're still concise. They're about maybe 200 pages, double spacing kind of volume. A textbook can be 500 pages, single line. So the amount of information that you get from a textbook, in this case, open textbook, is richer. But we do have to ensure that the content that we put up there are in some sense at least curated by us to some extent. So that's how we do that. The reason, as I mentioned earlier on, when we do that is to prevent hallucination. You can always ask ChatGPT and you get an answer, right? But you cannot tell where is this source coming from. So in our AI, we point to you the specific chapter that this information is retrieved from, or number of chapters, different books. You get this information and it's done nicely for you by the generation ability of Gen AI. So that's how we do that. And students are finding this quite useful because then simple questions, repeated questions are fairly straightforward. So we are in the process of collecting information, getting feedback and understanding what type of questions students are asking. And then perhaps we can refine the way answers are given. Yeah, it costs money though. API costs money.
I'm afraid that we have run out of time. If anyone has any last comments to make, if not, I'll end the webinar. So thank you so much to our partner Turnitin and our wonderful panelists for your insights shared. I have personally learned a lot regarding AI. There will be a full recording of this webinar on THE's website. So everyone who has registered will receive a copy. Feel free to share and distribute it. And do feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at future THE and Turnitin events. Bye-bye.